this up so that put the
I
screen.
did. I already did that. Yeah. We're just, there we are. Okay, welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of the 10th of July, 2017. Let us all rise for a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a period of silent meditation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of the business for the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether you are speaking in favor or in opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, and the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meetings of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date nor planned for a future agenda. And today is an open mic meeting. Will the clerk please call the first item of business?
Yes, I would remind those giving testimony to please clearly state your name and address and to sign in on the sign-in sheet laying on the podium. Our first item is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 13.
Any discussion on these items?
I would like to say something, if there's no one.
Oh, we have someone here to testify.
You do.
Okay.
Do you?
We have somebody being appointed to a board the first time here?
We just have one reappointment.
A reappointment. Okay.
I just wanted to comment on the reappointments.
Oh, you want to comment on the reappointment, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Chris Hove and Tracy Core and Dennis Shear, because the Planning Commission is a really long commitment. It's a 6-year commitment, and they just signed up. You know, as you notice, their terms won't expire till the year 2023. I don't think most of us are making commitments that long. It's a big deal, and we rely on their volunteer efforts. They meet every other week at 1 o'clock until the meeting's done, and I'm really grateful for their service. So I want to thank them for re-upping their terms.
Any other discussion? All right. Next item, please.
All right, we can vote on these items. Items 1 through 3 were introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Carl, seconded by Jane. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Then items 4, 6, and 10 and 11 were introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Larry and seconded by John. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next then are liquor resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward, raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and addresses. I'll call items 14 and 15 together. They're the application of Quality Inn for a Class I liquor license at 3200 Northwest 12th Street, as well as the related manager application of Nicole Dean. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Daryl K. Stock, attorney at law, 5533 South 27th, Suite 203, Lincoln, Nebraska, appearing on behalf of 1515-23 Market Street on both of these items, and I'll answer any questions somebody may have.
Any questions? Carl?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stock, for being here. The individual who owns this property looks like owns a number of hotels and restaurants in other places.
Right.
And then Ms. Dean is the one who will be the local manager for it.
Correct.
Can you explain a little bit about the liquor license and what it will entail?
Well, we had a hearing in front of the commission on this, and what we worked out with the commission was we were going to go through the relicensing of this because they were closed down for a period of time, principally because they could not justify opening a bar there. So the What we worked out with the commission is that we're going to only, it's a manager's reception, late afternoon is going to be the only activity that's going to be, liquor activity is going to be conducted on the premises on that. And it works out well with Nicole's schedule because she works, the travel lodge she works at is owned and managed by the same company that owns and manages the Quality Inn. And so she'll just split shifts between the two hotels.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Jane?
I know on the application, you can help but notice that there were several violations that were referencing a vehicle that had some mechanical issues. Can you tell us, have those mechanical issues been resolved?
Pretty impressive, wasn't it? Here's what I've been told. Guadalupe is the food and beverage manager for a number of hotels run by U.S. Motels, Colorado Hospitality, and the Denver area. And he splits his time between these various hotels each day. And I suspect, since he's not here, I can call him a leadfoot. My understanding is that the defective vehicle charged carries no points against your license. You'll notice there's some speeding violations that are intermixed in there. What I'm told from my contacts is that the defective vehicle is something that they'll let you plead to if you've got points issues. And so as far as from what I've understood, it's mostly speeding tickets busted down to a non-point situation.
I guess my thought was, why would they have stopped this individual if they didn't think that vehicle had some defective item on it that should probably get corrected so you wouldn't be stopped in the future again?
My point is, I don't think that's why he was stopped. I think he was stopped for speeding. Okay. And hopefully I can represent to you he's got a really good lawyer in the Denver area who can manage to continue to get speeding tickets and that sort of thing reduced to a non-point violation. So I wish I had a sunnier explanation, but I think that's the one I'm told is accurate.
Any other questions?
There's also a note in the application about the training, and Nicole's, is there any reason to suspect she won't complete the training in time?
No, she's here today. Have you completed the training yet?
Next week.
Okay, she said she's scheduled for Thursday.
Okay.
No, we follow up on those things and make sure the client conducts the training.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Stock.
Thank you.
Next item, please. Or excuse me, is there anybody else who'd like to testify on this item? Next item.
All right, next is item 16, application of McKinney's Irish Pub for the addition of a catering license to their existing Class I liquor license at 151 North 8th Street, Suite 140. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes.
Thanks, Joel. Just state your name and address.
Sorry. Joel Shasso, 471 Fletcher Boulevard, and Lincoln, Nebraska, 68521.
Mr. Schossel, why don't you tell us about your application today?
We want to add catering to the McKinney's license. There's a space in the lower level of the 151 North 8th Street that is available to do some rehearsal dinner, small banquet type events that we would like to cater from McKinney's, but it's not attached to us. And they're going to be very limited. Right now I'm thinking maybe 8, 10 a year, not very many events. We've also got an opportunity at Speedway Village with the USA Roller Sports coming to town, that they want to do a little bit of catered events out there. And when they contacted me, they didn't really know exactly what they were doing, and I kind of educated them a little bit on the liquor license process, and that you can't just put a bar out there because you want to. You've got to go through the right process. And so there's an opportunity for us to do something out there too, but it's still in the works, and that's not a done deal, but we'd just like to have the ability to cater events out of McKinney's.
Okay, questions? Thank you, Mr. Schossel. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item, please.
All right, next is item 17, application of Kelly's Pub to expand its Class C liquor license by the addition of an area measuring approximately 27 feet by 27 feet at 1318 North 66th Street. Just raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you. Just state your name and address.
Okay, Chris Codad, 10922 Bel Air Drive in Omaha, Nebraska, 68144.
Okay, Mr. Kodad, tell us about your application here.
We are simply just adding some space on that was in that Four Star Drug was using in this little strip center. There was a little storage area behind one of our walls that they were using, and since they moved out, we took that space over, which is a 27 by 27 space, and just going to put our pool tables and dartboard back there is all we're doing.
Okay, questions for Mr. Kodad? Could you introduce us to your family members here?
That's Roman and Max. Those are my two sons.
You
They
guys-
see themselves on TV now, so they're all happy.
All right, very good. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item, please.
All right, next is item 18, application of Bourbon Entertainment for an SDL to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 556 feet by 525 feet at N Street between 14th and 16th Streets on August 5th between 5 p.m. and 11:59 p.m.
Good afternoon, council members. Sean Reagan, attorney at law, 140 North 8th Street, Suite 250, appearing on behalf of Bourbon Entertainment. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Reagan? Carl?
Yes, thank you. So this is the space essentially where Rib Fest used to be?
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And this year, Pinnacle Bank did, I think it was Pinnacle Bank, SMG did the Celebrate Lincoln a couple weekends ago. Unfortunately, I think that was rained out for the most part. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, we did 311 there, and it was really successful. Had about 5,800 people show up. Far exceeded our expectations.
And that venue, that site worked well for that event?
It did.
Great.
It did. On this particular event, we don't expect near the 311 numbers that we had. We're
Yeah.
probably going to get 2,000,
Okay.
hopefully, at least.
Okay. Larry?
Hi.
Hello.
I was just looking at the map, the drawing for the event, and I noticed that the sidewalk on N Street will be closed, both sides of N Street between 16th and Centennial Mall. And it just made me wonder if you're also closing the bikeway for the event, or if you have worked with Public Works on that at all.
Yeah, I believe we have, and the bike lane would be closed only immediately before and immediately after. And I think that what the timeline is 5 p.m. gates, 6:30 p.m. show. I know there's a curfew, but I think we're done at 10:45. And I think what they did with 311, the same thing. I think they just rerouted it over to M Street, if I recall correctly.
Okay, other
Thank you.
questions? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Reagan.
Right, thank you.
Would anyone else like to testify on this item?
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of items 14 through 18.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Carl. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next then are our public hearing resolutions. Item 19, approving the Joint Budget Committee funding for 2017-18.
We have someone here to testify on this item?
Good afternoon, Sarah Hoyle, Director of Lincoln Lancaster Human Services. The Joint Budget Committee is a funding that is split between the city and the county. It allows for nonprofit entities within our community to reach out to those citizens most vulnerable, those citizens most in need in our community, and provide direct services to them. This specific funding allows for 4 primary areas, both adult and youth behavioral health, food, shelter, and victim safety in our community. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Sarah?
Sarah, do you want to explain a little bit about the partnership with United Way for people who aren't familiar with it, since this is, I think, a very helpful partnership in distributing these funds in an effective way?
Sure. We partner with the United Way to get citizen input as to how this funding is best spent in our community. So it goes through the United Way Community Process Team. They solicit volunteers from various entities across our community to review the applications. They also contract with CPAs to audit the budgets of the selected agencies, and then they provide input to the Joint Budget Committee. The Joint Budget Committee has two county commissioners, two council members, and then an appointee of both the mayor and the county board that sit on that committee and review ultimately and make the funding decisions.
Okay, Cindy?
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all the work you do on this. And my understanding is that the county, I thought that our colleagues might like to know, the county has actually increased its contribution to the JBC this year?
Yes, by $200,000.
Very good. Any other questions? Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.
Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item, please.
All right, next is item 20, approving an interlocal agreement between the Railroad Transportation Safety District and the city to provide $20 million for the railroad-related portion of the South Beltway improvements.
Randy Hoskins, Assistant City Engineer. What we brought before you today is, I think, a real positive step for the city in getting the South Beltway funded. The Railroad Transportation Safety District has agreed to kick in $20 million towards the local match of the South Beltway project. The city does have a 20% local match towards the South Beltway that we are required to pay. The current estimate for the South Beltway project is $300 million, so that's $60,000 that we would have to come up with.
60 million.
60 million.
60 million.
Yeah, I wish it was 60,000, right? And so, you know, in working with Roger Feigert and the RTSD, we've been able to get the RTSD to help us by increasing their proposed share that they would pay towards this. And if you look at this, this works out pretty fairly. You know, originally we were looking at a $200 million project, jumped to $300 million. So our share jumped, you know, by a third. What they've done here is they've increased their proposed amount that they will give towards the project by a third, or a half again. So I think it's a good deal based on the numbers that were provided by the Nebraska Department of Transportation. They would have over $20 million in costs that could be paid by the RTSD. So again, I think this is a good deal for the city.
Okay. Lorene?
Can you just run through the numbers real quickly? Because I think the fact sheet has the city's contribution is 30 million, RTSD is 20, so that makes 50 in local match, but you're saying 60.
Yeah, where that's coming from is we are hoping to receive an agreement from the Nebraska Department of Transportation that would cap the city's costs at 50 million. At this point, we have not received that. We're hopeful to be seeing that here in the next week or so. But if we receive that and we get that approved, then yeah, that would cap us at 50 million. Right now, we are on the hook for 20% of that 300 million, which would be 60.
But if for some reason that doesn't go through, we have 10 more million in funding to identify?
That is correct.
Okay.
Start baking cookies.
Thank you. Thanks for answering that question, because that was my question of where we were on the agreement with NDOR. But also, when we were discussing the agreement with NDOR for the city, my understanding was part of our agreement in them allowing us to cap our costs as a city would also be that we wouldn't be asking for any refund should the project come in less than what we were anticipating, but only to share in any federal funding that came the way of the project that wasn't anticipated. In this particular agreement, it looked to me that that's not the same agreement that we are taking with the RTSD. Could you explain to me where I'm right or wrong and how that works?
You are correct in what the city's, what we expect to see in the agreement from the Nebraska Department of Transportation. We do expect that it will say, you know, if for some reason it comes in less than $250 million, we won't see any of that back. As I recall, what this says though is that basically, if the amount of improvements that would be eligible for RTSD funding do not reach the level of $20 million, then they could ask for that money back.
I see.
Right. This, just to be clear, this agreement is between the city and the RTSD.
That is correct.
Not involving the state of Nebraska.
Right.
That is correct.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so it has to do with those items that are specifically eligible
Yes.
for RTSD funds.
Correct.
And they increased in agreement, in exchange for this agreement, the RTSD increased by 13 million, is that right?
7 million.
They
7
were-
million, I'm sorry.
They were previously at 13 million, and now they've agreed to 20 million.
Thank you.
Carl.
Thank you. Randy, next week on our agenda, second reading hearings on some development South 27th in the general area of where the South Bypass will be located. Is that corridor protected from development at this time?
Yeah, the one that you'll see coming forward next week is actually about a mile north of where the South Beltway will be.
Okay.
But yes, we do have corridor protection along the entire South Beltway and also along 27th Street as it comes up to meet, or as it goes down to meet the South Beltway. There's corridor protection along that whole thing. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Thank you, Randy. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Very good. Next item, please.
All right, next are our public hearing ordinances, second reading, and related resolutions. I'll call items 21 and 22 together. They are change of zone 17007, application of Taylor Investment Company, Robert Edwin Simpson, and Joseph and Joanne Holmes for a change of zone from R2 residential to RT residential transition on property generally located 1 block south of the O Street corridor between South 56th Street and South Cotner Boulevard on the south side of N Street, and the related development and conditional zoning agreement.
Good afternoon. My name's Kent Seacrest, representing Taylor Investment Company, who's the application on this property. Rick Taylor, who's the family representative, is here and to answer any questions that you might have. This is a proposed rezoning of the red area that I'm showing on this map, if it comes up, from R2 to RT, which is a residential transition zone. For you, those of you that need to understand where we are on the ground, this is the corner that used to be a Alltel cellular store. This is the other corner, and this is the property that's empty in the back to the south of this shopping area. And it looks like that if you're driving along South 56th Street. This would allow single family and duplexes to continue, but any other use like office, which is the primary use we're seeking, to come back in later and in front of you for a special permit showing the exact layout. Some of you, RT's not the most popular zone that you have in front of you very often. In fact, when I researched it, we've done it only 13 times in the community, and we've only actually built something 10 of the 13 times. But the buildings are very small, 5,000 square feet. They have to have pitched roof, non-reflective material. In other words, they're supposed to look pretty similar to residential. Right to our west is an RT zone, so we're continuing the RT zone to the east, and so that's what that property looks like. Give you a flavor of other RT. Here's one along Cotner Boulevard by Y Street. It's an office building that's got the pitch roof and the material similar to residential. Here's one at on 48th Street near Normal Boulevard, and then here's one along South Street at 53rd and South Street. So that just gives you the flavor. It's in this case to go from the intensity of O Street back into the R2 neighborhood. We did have a neighborhood meeting last month. 6 of the neighbors came. They asked really great questions. I did not sense any opposition. Their bottom line is they did not want apartments back there. They'd rather have the office use than the apartments use. And so If you read your staff report, you will see the planning department is recommending approval. We've had to do a zoning agreement where we addressed a series of controlling, limiting access along Contner and South 56th Street, grading and drainage plans, planting street trees, preserving the trees to the back up against the neighborhood, and installing some sidewalks along the way. So Planning Department recommend conditional approval. Planning Commission, nobody opposed this, and the Planning Commission recommended 7-0 in support, and I would ask for your support as well. Any questions?
Questions, Mr. Seacrest? Carl?
Yes, thank you. And Kent, could you explain the limited access on Cottner and South 56th Street, what it is and why?
Sure. Right now, there's our property, and we already have given up our access on 56. But to our east, as part of this application, are 2 single-family homes. They get to keep their access until they convert out of single-family home ownership. If they then convert to an office use, we, as the Taylor property, are going to have to give them access to come off of N Street. So in the long term, if they do redevelop, you will have 2 less curb cuts onto Cottner, which will allow the traffic to theoretically move faster or have more capacity in the network.
So N Street access continues? That's
N
not
Street is
okay.
where the world will circulate off of.
Great.
Other questions? Marion?
I just wanted to confirm that the applicant was comfortable with all the conditions that are associated with the zoning agreement.
Yeah, both the Taylor group as well as 2 houses have signed the agreement, and so we have happy face on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item.
All right, next is item 23, street name change 17001, renaming West Dubois Street, located in Highlands View First Edition, as Northwest Dubois Street.
Good afternoon, David Carey with the Planning Department, here on behalf of the Building and Safety Department on this item. Just a real quick overview of what was provided in the application, that this was a change in the design of the preliminary plat, where initially we had a predominantly east-west street of West Dubois, which according to the code, with a new alignment with the Dubois portion of this being predominantly north-south now, is required to have a NW or northwest designation before for addressing purposes, mainly for emergency service purposes. This does affect 1 existing house on that block. I'm available for any questions you might have.
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Carey.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to testify on this item? Next item, please.
All right, if not, that concludes our public hearing. We can move into the voting session. Public hearing resolutions. Item 19 is approving the Joint Budget Committee funding for 2017-18, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Carl, seconded by Jane. Any discussion?
I just wanted to kind of build on what Cindy said and thank Commissioners Jennifer Brinkman and Deb Shore, because they provided some real leadership to supplement the funding for the JBC to get more good work done in our community, and it's nice to see that grow a little bit. It's been at a steady amount, reduced amount for quite a number of years.
Other comments? Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 20 is the interlocal agreement with the RTSD, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Carl, seconded by Benny. Any discussion?
Looks like we're on the road to progress.
Hope we don't. Okay, well, with that, let's call the roll.
Gotta stay awake somehow.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Public hearing, ordinances, second reading, and related resolutions are items 21 through 23. Ordinances, third reading, comp plan conformance 17008, approving an amendment to the capital improvement program to amend Public Works and Utilities Project number 0048, Water Distribution Mains, Area 6, Rokeby Road, 84th Street to 91st Street, to extend the project boundary from 91st Street to 94th Street, designate the project for construction in fiscal year 16-17, designate LES as the funding source, and appropriate the LES funds in fiscal year 16-17, introduced by Shope.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Benny, seconded by Jane. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Shobe?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 25, Comp Plan Amendment 17002, amending the 2040 Comp Plan by expanding future service limit to include the proposed Lincoln Electric System Southeast Service Center site on property generally located at South 91st and Rokeby Road, and to move the site from Tier 3 to Tier 1B Priority Growth Area. Introduced by Shobe.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Benny, seconded by John. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Shobe?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 26 is Annexation 17004. This is annexing approximately 283.79 acres, generally located at South 91st Street and Rokeby Road. As I mentioned earlier, we did have a request to delay action to November 6th, and I believe you wanted to include public hearing with that.
Correct.
I'd like to move that we delay action to November 6th with a continuation of public hearing.
Second.
Moved by Jane, seconded by Carl. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Shobe?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 27 is the memorandum of understanding between the city and LES regarding LES's agreement to pay the cost to obtain Rural Water District Number 1, Lancaster County's release of the properties being annexed by the city located within the RWD boundaries relating to the new LES Operating Center at South 98th and Rokeby Road, introduced by Shobe.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Benny, seconded by John. Discussion? Carl?
Yeah. This has to do with annexation. Should this, do we need to act on this now or not?
I believe it was fine to go ahead with this one.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So I would just note, yeah, so it says that it is related to the one we just voted to delay. So could we maybe have some clarification from staff on that, or?
We're talking about the MOU. It's been negotiated. I think this is an understanding that between the city and the rural water. So I think for the rural water district to go forward, they have to know that we're committed to this.
Right.
I don't see any reason to put this off.
So this is just a buyout of their interest.
Right. And this is something we do on a periodic basis as the city expands. In this case, of course, because LES is asking for the expansion, they're also covering the costs.
Okay.
Do we know what the dates are on that? I'm just pulling up the attachment. Do they need to be modified to reflect the delay, or in terms of the MOU effective date?
Well, when you look at the buyout costs, you're doing it, I mean, this is a permanent buyout. So I think the difference between adopting this in July and adopting it in November is going to be a relatively small amount, given the fact that this is in perpetuity.
I just meant what the date it goes into effect. Is that a part of the MOU, and does it need to be adjusted? Or, I mean, you wouldn't
Should be
want it
contingent on
to,
the annexation.
yeah.
Well, the only reason why this would be a problem would be if the council, for some reason, in November comes back and says, we're not going to annex that ground for LES, which seems
You never
relatively
know
unlikely.
what this council will do. I don't know.
Larian says, don't take us for granted. All right? All right. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Our resolutions on first reading are items 28 through 29. Ordinances first reading are items 30 through 39. Anyone wishing to address the council on a matter and not on this agenda and not plan to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one coming forward, I'd move for adjournment.
Second.
Adjournment moved by John, seconded by Cindy. Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
We're adjourned.